The Hostile Abyss, a tale of two shipwrecks. Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're taking a journey into literally one of the absolute most unforgiving environments on our entire planet, the deep sea. We're going to explore a tale of two very different, yet equally monumental shipwrecks, and look at what they actually tell us about humanity's relationship with the abyss. Okay, let's dive into this, literally. Down there, the ocean is a hostile alien world. As we go through this explainer today, I really want you to keep this quote in the back of your mind. You see, the ocean isn't just a passive body of water. For our journey today, it's our main antagonist. It's this relentless, crushing force, and it absolutely plays by its own rules. So to truly understand just how hostile it can be, we need to start with a deeply unsettling question. Think about a modern, massive, state-of-the-art vessel. What happens when Britain's largest merchant ship just vanishes? Without a trace, or, well, more accurately, vanishes into the deep water. This is the very real mystery of the MV Derbyshire, a ship that sailed into a stretch of ocean southeast of Japan and was essentially swallowed whole. 294 meters. To put that massive number into perspective, that is the staggering Titanic-sized scale of the MV Derbyshire. We are talking about a vessel of truly immense proportions here, Britain's largest ever-built merchant ship. A ship of this sheer scale doesn't just disappear without leaving a trace, right? Well, until it did. Back in September 1980, this massive ship sailed directly into a typhoon. It completely vanished in an area notoriously known as Japan's Bermuda Triangle. It's a stretch of ocean named for the crazy number of ships that have gone down there without any explanation whatsoever. When the Derbyshire disappeared, it left absolutely no trace behind. Nothing. Leaving 44 grieving families with zero answers about what happened to their loved ones. Look at what we have in the screen here. For decades, these grieving families were fed this deeply frustrating, completely false narrative. They were essentially told, off the record of course, that it was probably just human error. And man, it is incredibly hard to fight back against that kind of excuse when there's absolutely no physical evidence. No SOS call was ever received, and most tragically of all, there was no crew left to defend themselves. But those families, they refused to just accept that. As you can see on this timeline, the tragedy struck in 1980, but it took an agonizing wait all the way into the 1990s for technology to finally catch up. That's when remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, finally located the wreck sitting nearly 4,000 meters down at the bottom of the ocean. This discovery allowed for a proper, thorough investigation. And finally, in the year 2000, the British government formally exonerated the crew. It was a triumphant but incredibly sullen victory that was literally 2 decades in the making. And this brilliantly illustrates what they found. When investigators reached the wreck, they realized it wasn't human error at all. It was the terrifying mechanics of progressive flooding under extreme wave conditions. The ship had encountered Typhoon Orchid, which had intensified way beyond normal parameters. First, days of massive waves just hammered the ship's foredeck, ultimately destroying the ventilation pipes. Once those failed, water started pouring into the first hatch, and then the next. And here's the really scary part. Each breach accelerated the next one, because the sheer weight of all that incoming water pulled the bow lower and lower into the hostile ocean. Just 2 minutes. That is literally all it took for the massive 294-meter Derbyshire to completely sink. The crew did absolutely nothing wrong. They were just overwhelmed by a freak storm of unusual violence. And because it went down so incredibly fast, there was zero time to deploy lifeboats and absolutely zero time to even send out an SOS call. Now, while this tragedy took 44 lives, uncovering what truly happened changed the maritime world forever. Because of the Derbyshire investigation, international maritime safety standards experienced this crucial, permanent shift. Hatch covers on bulk carriers all across the globe were entirely redesigned. So this heartbreaking tragedy ultimately forced changes that have protected countless sailors ever since. Okay, moving on to our next section. The ultimate deep-sea museum is closed, transitioning from the Derbyshire to the Titanic. You see, while the investigation into the Derbyshire opened the door for sweeping global safety standards, another iconic set of doors at the bottom of the ocean is rapidly slamming shut. To really grasp why, we have to remember just how hostile this environment is. 12,500 feet. That is the depth where the Titanic rests in the North Atlantic abyssal zone. Just geographically speaking, this shipwreck is almost entirely inaccessible. We are right back in that hostile alien world. And because it's that far down, you are instantly met with a bone-crushing 6,000 pounds per square inch of water pressure. 6,000. That's pressing down on literally anything that dares to enter that zone. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that staggering dollar amount. Braving that immense pressure comes at a steep financial cost. For a brief little window in time, an unregulated deep-sea exploration industry actually offered this up as an extreme tourist destination. If you were a billionaire with unlimited resources, you could literally buy your way down in experimental submarines for a crazy $250,000 per dive. But as we all know, that brief window of extreme tourism slammed violently shut in June of 2023. The catastrophic implosion of the Titan submersible left the entire maritime world in absolute shock. And overnight, the business side of deep-sea exploration changed forever. The era of unregulated extreme tourism essentially ended that exact day. Human regulation quickly locked the public away from the wreckage. Just look at these points. Authorities and the U.S. Coast Guard stepped in immediately. They mandated strict safety standards, massive insurance requirements, and certifications that became so incredibly strict, companies simply couldn't operate there anymore. OceanGate, the main company running these tours, completely shut down its operations, bringing commercial tourist dives to an end for good. So today, even if you have the money, you just cannot go. Which brings us here, a massive, relentless biological attack. The ocean takes back history. You see, human regulation isn't the only thing keeping us away from the Titanic. The ocean itself is actively closing the door, launching this relentless biological attack on the shipwreck to take back its history. For years, scientists just naturally assumed that the freezing water and lack of oxygen down there would preserve the Titanic forever. Well, they were entirely wrong. The wreck is actually ground zero for a totally bizarre natural anomaly. Enter Halomonas titanicae, a newly discovered species of metal-eating bacteria that is quite literally consuming the ship. And the reality of this is just staggering. The ship is actively disappearing right in front of our eyes. If you look at recent footage, it doesn't even look like a solid piece of steel anymore. Hundreds of pounds of metal are being eaten by this bacteria every single day. Entire ship decks that used to be recognizable are now just collapsing under their own weight. So we are literally in the final chapter of exploration for this ship. Now, access isn't completely closed off to humanity just yet. Highly professional scientific mapping expeditions are still possible, but it is heavily restricted and it's extremely dangerous. Getting close to the wreck today is so hazardous that even a minor accidental contact, or honestly merely the water pressure from a submarine's propeller thrust, could trigger a massive, catastrophic collapse of whatever structure is left. Which leaves us with this incredibly somber, inevitable fact. Soon, the most recognizable shipwreck in human history will become absolutely nothing more than a dark stain on the seafloor. And despite all our modern technology, all our wealth, and all our curiosity, there is absolutely nothing we can do to stop it. The deep sea is reclaiming its territory.
So the crucial point is, when you put these two incredible stories side by side, the contrast is really stark. On one hand, you have the tragic loss of the MV Derbyshire in a horrific typhoon, which ultimately opened the door to crucial global maritime safety changes that are still protecting sailors today. But on the other hand, the Titanic represents a tragedy where the doors of exploration, both through strict human regulation and just natural biological decay, are now permanently, irreversibly closed.
It truly makes you respect the sheer, unstoppable power of the deep sea. Which leaves us with one final awe-inspiring question to think about today. If this hostile alien world down there can completely erase a steel behemoth like the Titanic, what else is hidden out there in the dark of the abyss? Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.